Hey, can I have your attention? I'm going to tell you about the night someone tried to kill me and my unborn daughter, and what my husband did about it. Look, because when I married Ji Won-shik, I knew he had a dark past. Honestly, I did. What I didn't know was whether he'd left it behind or if it was just waiting for the right moment to come back. My name is Zainab Adeyemi-Ji. I'm a human rights lawyer from Lagos, Nigeria. I'm married to one of Seoul's most powerful tech billionaires and 8 months pregnant with our first child. This is the story of how someone locked me in a burning room to test whether my husband was still the monster he used to be, and how I discovered that sometimes the most terrifying power isn't violence, it's restraint. But before I tell you what happened that night, wait, let me ask you something. Where in the world are you watching from right now? What time is it there? Drop it in the comments, because these stories connect us across borders and languages. And if you believe people can truly change, that redemption isn't just a fantasy, hit that subscribe button. You're about to need it for what comes next. Now, let's begin.
Afro tales. The weak will become strong one day.
It started with a smell. Smoke. Faint at first. I thought maybe Won-shik had left something on the stove before he went to his office that night. But the apartment was empty except for me, 8 months pregnant and exhausted, reading case files in bed because insomnia had become my constant companion. Then I heard it. Click, click, click. We had electronic locks throughout the apartment, every door, every window. The smart home system Won-shik had installed after we learned I was pregnant, the one he said would keep us safe. Ironic. I tried the bedroom door, but it was locked from the outside. My hand went instinctively to my belly where our daughter was kicking, hard, frantic, like she knew something I hadn't accepted yet. We were trapped. The smoke was thicker now, seeping under the door in gray tendrils that looked like searching fingers. I grabbed my phone, called Won-shik, straight to voicemail. He was in a board meeting, the quarterly reports that always ran late. I called emergency services. I'm trapped in my apartment, 47th floor, Gangnam Heights Tower. There's smoke. I can't get out. I'm pregnant. Fire department dispatched. 8 minutes. 8 minutes. My daughter picked again, harder this time. I ran to the window, 47 stories down. There was no fire escape, no balcony, just glass and a long fall, and the Seoul skyline glittering below like it didn't know I was dying. That's when I realized something that made my blood freeze. The smoke wasn't spreading naturally. It was concentrated. It was deliberate. Someone hadn't just started a fire, they'd designed this. They'd locked the doors and disabled the alarms I now realized weren't screaming. They trapped me specifically in this room. This wasn't an accident. This was murder. I stumbled to the bathroom, wetted every towel I could find, stuffed them under the door. My medical training from volunteer work in Lagos kicked in. Stay low, breathe shallow, and keep calm. But my daughter wasn't calm. She was fighting inside me, kicking like she was trying to punch her way out. I know, baby, I whispered in Yoruba, my native language. I know you're scared. So am I. That's when I heard it. Boom. Boom. Someone was breaking through the apartment's front door. My first thought, the fire department arrived impossibly fast. My second thought, what if it's whoever locked us in? Then I heard his voice. Zainab! Zainab! Won-shik, my husband, but his voice was different. It was wild and raw, like something primal had torn through his usual control. I'm here! I screamed. Bedroom! More booming. The bedroom door was reinforced. Wanshik's idea, another safety feature. Now it was a cage. I heard him throwing himself against it. Once, twice, 3 times. The door exploded inward. Wanshik stood in the smoke-filled doorway, and I barely recognized him. His hand was bleeding, knuckles split open, fingers at wrong angles from breaking through. His shoulder hung strangely, dislocated. His eyes were absolutely wild. But he didn't acknowledge the injuries. He didn't even seem to feel them. He wrapped me in a wet jacket, lifted me like I weighed nothing despite my 8-month belly, and ran. 47 flights of stairs, with one arm useless and carrying a pregnant woman. He didn't slow, didn't stop, didn't speak, except to say, "Breathe, Zainab. Just breathe." I'd seen my husband in boardrooms commanding powerful men, seen him negotiate billion-won deals with surgical precision, but I'd never seen this. This wasn't the reformed corporate raider I'd married. This was something older, something he'd promised me he'd left behind, and that terrified me almost as much as the fire. Outside the building, everything was chaos. Fire trucks, ambulances, media vans already circling like vultures. Paramedics pulled me from Wanshik's arms, checked my vitals, and checked the baby's heartbeat. It was irregular, too fast, then too slow. "We need to get her to the hospital, now." Wanshik tried to follow me into the ambulance. A paramedic stopped him. "Sir, your hand." "I don't care about my hand. You need medical attention." I said I don't care. They let him in. He sat beside me, his destroyed hand hanging uselessly, his good hand gripping my son so tight it hurt. I didn't complain. I think we both needed the pain to know we were real, that we'd survived. The fire marshal approached before the ambulance doors closed. This was arson. It looks professional. Electronic locks tampered remotely, smoke detectors disabled, accelerant used. Someone wanted her dead. The detective beside him, "Mr. G, who would want to hurt your wife?" Wanshik didn't answer, but his jaw clenched, and his eyes did something I'd never seen before. They went completely cold and empty, like looking into a frozen lake and seeing something predatory moving underneath. That's when I noticed it. Across the street. Black Mercedes, tinted windows. It didn't belong in the chaos. Too still, too watching. Wanshik saw it too. His whole body went rigid. He recognized that car, and I realized this wasn't random. This was personal, and my husband knew exactly who tried to kill me. The ambulance doors closed. Sirens screamed. We pulled away from the building, from the smoke, from the Mercedes that sat watching like a satisfied cat. Then the pain started. "Wanshik," I gasped. "Something's wrong. The baby." Contractions, sharp and brutal and wrong. Too early, 2 months too early. The paramedic's face changed. "We're losing fetal heart rate. Driver, faster!" Wanshik's destroyed hand somehow found strength to grip the stretcher rail. "Save them! Both of them, whatever it costs." "Sir, this isn't about money. Then what is it about?" "Time, and we're running out." The last thing I saw before the pain overwhelmed me was Wanshik's face. The mask had slipped completely, and underneath, I saw the man he used to be. The man people called Seoul's executioner. The man who'd built an empire by destroying anyone who stood in his way. That man was calculating, planning, hunting. And I realized something that should have comforted me, but didn't. Whoever tried to kill us had made a terrible mistake. They'd assumed Wanshik had changed completely, that love had made him soft.
They were about to learn the difference between reformed and defanged, because the monster hadn't died. It had just learned to wait. Before I tell you what happened in that hospital, whether my daughter survived, whether I survived, you need to understand something. You need to know who Won-shik was before he met me, because the woman who set that fire, she knew that man. She trained with him, and she wanted to see if he still existed.
So let me take you back 2 years. Let me tell you how a Nigerian human rights lawyer fell in love with Seoul's most dangerous corporate raider. I met Won-shik in Geneva at a UN Human Rights Council investigation. His company, Hanguk Ventures, had subsidiaries across 6 African countries. One of them, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, had a factory where 17 workers died. Safety violations reported 8 times, ignored every time, because fixing them would cost 3% of the profit margin. I was the lead investigator, and I was furious. He walked into that conference room like he owned it. Expensive suit, cold eyes, flanked by lawyers who looked like they ate human rights activists for breakfast. I'd researched him. They called him the executioner in Seoul business circles. No, it was not because he killed people. It was because he killed everything they built. Careers, companies, legacies. He specialized in hostile takeovers, dismantling competitors, legal warfare that left nothing standing. I expected a monster. What I got was complicated. "Mr. G," I said, laying photographs on the table. 17 faces, 17 dead workers. You were warned. You did nothing. Most powerful men deflect, deny, threaten legal action. Won-shik studied the photographs for a long moment. Then he looked at me and said something I didn't expect. "You're right." Just like that. "You're right." He agreed to a full settlement, complete safety reforms, third-party oversight. His lawyers were furious, but he did it anyway. After the meeting, he asked me to dinner. I refused. He asked again. I refused again. The third time, I said yes, because I needed to understand, why would a man known for destroying people suddenly care? Over dinner, he didn't justify himself. He didn't defend his business practices. He asked about me, about Nigeria, about why I became a lawyer. I told him about my father, a small business owner who was destroyed by someone exactly like Won-shik. Ruthless corporate takeover. Dad never recovered. Died believing he'd failed. But he hadn't failed. Someone with more power had just decided he didn't matter. Won-shik listened, really listened. Then he said something that changed everything. "I've done that to people, more than I can count, and until right now, I never thought about their families, about what happened after I won." 6 months later, he proposed, not at an expensive restaurant, not with cameras and grand gestures, in his apartment, after I'd spent 3 hours tearing apart his quarterly financial report for ethical violations. "You're still using suppliers with questionable labor practices. Marry me." I stared at him. "What?" "I love you. I love that you won't let me be mediocre. I love that you see the person I'm trying to be and believe I can get there. I'm not the man you deserve, not yet, but I'm trying, and I'll keep trying for the rest of my life if you'll let me." I said yes, not because I believed he'd changed completely, but because I believed he was trying. And isn't that all any of us can do? Try to be better than we were yesterday. We got married 3 months later. My family flew in from Lagos. His family mostly didn't come, scandalized that Ji Won-shik was marrying a Nigerian woman. We didn't care. 8 months into our marriage, I got pregnant. We were ecstatic. Terrified, but ecstatic. We had no idea someone was watching and planning.
waiting to test whether Won-shik's transformation was real or just an elaborate performance. Her name was Choi Yoo-jin, his ex-girlfriend and former business partner, the woman who'd built his empire with him using methods that made my blood run cold when I later learned the details. When Won-shik started reforming his business practices, Yoo-jin saw it as weakness, betrayal. She'd warned me once at a chance meeting at a Seoul restaurant. "You seem like a good woman," she'd said in perfect English, her smile sharp as broken glass. "Smart, idealistic. So I'll tell you something. The man you think you're saving, he doesn't exist. Won-shik doesn't build, he destroys. It's in his DNA. One day, when you threaten what he's built, even accidentally, you'll see the real him. It will terrify you." I should have listened. But I was in love, and love makes you believe in redemption, in second chances, in the idea that people can outgrow their worst selves. I was right, but I was also wrong. Because the night Eugene locked me in that burning room, she wasn't trying to kill me. She was trying to resurrect the monster she knew Won-shik could be. She wanted him to revert, to prove he hadn't really changed, to show that beneath the reformed exterior, Seoul's executioner still lived. And in that ambulance, racing toward the hospital with contractions tearing through me and my daughter's heartbeat failing, I realized something terrifying. Eugene might get exactly what she wanted. The hospital was in chaos. Doctors, nurses, machines screaming. Someone was shouting about placental abruption, emergency C-section. 8 months wasn't full term. The baby's lungs weren't ready. I grabbed Won-shik's good hand, the one that wasn't destroyed from breaking down doors. "If something goes wrong," I gasped through the pain, "nothing will go wrong. If it does, choose her. Save our daughter." His face did something complicated. "I'm not choosing. You're both surviving." "Won-shik!" "No." His voice was steel. "You don't get to make me choose. You both survive. That's the only option." Then the anesthesia hit. Everything went fuzzy. I heard Won-shik arguing with doctors. "Why isn't she sedated yet? She's in pain." I heard surgical tools. I felt pressure. And then, nothing. When I woke, I didn't know if it had been hours or minutes. The room was too quiet, too still. My first thought, where's my baby? My second thought, why is Won-shik crying? I'd never seen him cry. Not at our wedding, not when I told him I was pregnant, not ever. "The baby," I tried to say, but my throat was desert dry. "She's alive." His voice broke on the words. 3 pounds, 2 ounces. NICU, breathing tube, but alive. Fighting. Relief hit me like a physical wave. Then, "I want to see her." They wheeled me to the neonatal intensive care unit, and there she was, this impossibly tiny human we'd made. Tubes and wires everywhere, so small, so fragile, but her little chest was rising and falling, rising and falling. I pressed my hand against the incubator glass. Won-shik's good hand covered mine. We stood there, this Nigerian lawyer and this Korean billionaire and this tiny fighter who refused to die. And I thought, Eugene almost took this from us, this moment, this miracle. That's when I stopped being afraid and started being furious. "You know who did this," I said, not a question. Won-shik nodded. "Your ex, Eugene?" "Yes." "Why?" He told me everything, their history, building his company together through ruthless corporate warfare. When he'd tried to change, she'd seen it as weakness. She'd been sending threatening messages for a year, messages he'd ignored, thinking she'd move on. But Eugene didn't want him back romantically. She wanted to prove he couldn't change. So she'd created a test, set a fire, locked me inside, wanted to see if he'd save me or hunt her with the old violence. I looked at my husband, this man who'd carried me down 47 flights with a destroyed hand and a dislocated shoulder, who'd chosen our safety over hunting the person who'd tried to kill us. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "What would you want me to do?" The question hung between us like smoke. "The old you," I said slowly, "would destroy her quietly. Make her disappear from business, from society, maybe from Korea entirely, right?" "Yes." "You want to do that now. Every instinct I have is screaming to make her pay. But you asked me to be different, and our daughter," he looked at the tiny human in the incubator, "she doesn't need a father who solves problems with destruction. She needs someone better. Here's what people don't tell you about marriage. Sometimes you have to be your partner's conscience, the voice that reminds them who they're trying to become when every part of them wants to revert. But I wasn't naive. Eugene had tried to murder me and our child. She needed to face consequences. Then don't destroy her the way you used to. Destroy her the way you are now." "What does that mean?" "It means to use the law. Build a case so airtight she can't escape. You said you were ruthless in business. Be ruthless in justice."
Won-shik looked at me for a long moment, then at our daughter, then back at me. And I saw him make a choice, the hardest choice he'd probably ever made. He nodded once. "Okay." But I saw something else in his eyes, something that should have comforted me but didn't. Because while he'd agreed to use legal methods, the calculation happening behind those eyes was still the same cold mathematics he'd used to dismantle companies. He'd agreed not to be violent, but he hadn't agreed to be merciful. And I realized Eugene wanted to resurrect a monster. Instead, she was about to meet something worse, a predator that had learned to hunt within the law. What Won-shik did next would shock everyone, including me. I couldn't leave the hospital. Our daughter, we named her Ji-Nari Zainab, Korean and Nigerian, Lily and Beauty, was fighting for every breath in the NICU. But Won-shik, he became a different kind of weapon, not the corporate raider, the investigator. Day one, he called a forensic accountant, a man named Kwon Ji-hoon, who apparently owed Won-shik a favor from years ago. "I need you to audit East Tech Holdings, that's Eugene's company. Find everything. Tax irregularities, shell companies, anything that doesn't comply with financial regulations. You have 72 hours. Day two, a private investigator arrived at my hospital room with a laptop. Won-shik had hired him to trace every digital footprint from the night of the fire. The electronic lock override came from an IP address, the investigator explained, showing us his findings. Traced back to East Tech Holdings server. Ms. Choi used her own company's network to commit arson. Sloppy. Day three, Detective Kim visited with news that made my heart race. We arrested the fire inspector. Turns out, someone paid him 50 million won to disable your building's sprinkler system the day of the fire. He's making a deal, full testimony in exchange for reduced charges. He identified Choi Yoo-jin from a photo lineup. I watched Won-shik absorb each piece of information with that same cold calculation I'd seen in the ambulance. But here's what surprised me. He wasn't hiding this from me. He brought every document to my hospital bed, asked my opinion. This wasn't the old Won-shik making unilateral decisions. This was a partnership. Dark partnership, but partnership. The forensic accountant found something interesting, Won-shik said on day 4. Eugene's been evading corporate taxes for 3 years, shell companies in the Cayman Islands, Singapore, Delaware. She owes approximately 8 billion won in unpaid taxes. That's criminal fraud. I was a lawyer. I knew what he was building. You're not just going after her for the fire. I'm going after her for everything she's ever done wrong.
every corner she cut, every law she bent, every bribe she paid. His voice was quiet, deadly. She tried to kill my family, so I'm going to dismantle her entire life, legally, methodically, until there's nothing left but rubble and regret. That's still revenge, I said softly. No. Won-shik looked at me with eyes that were somehow both cold and burning. Revenge would be making her disappear. This is accountability. There's a difference. Was there? I wasn't sure, but I also wasn't going to stop him. Because while he was building his legal case, I was having nightmares, waking up smelling smoke that wasn't there, watching nurses check on Nari and wondering if someone would try again. Yujin had done this to us. She'd earned whatever was coming. On day 5, Won-shik's lawyers filed everything simultaneously. Criminal complaint for attempted murder, arson, and bribery. Civil lawsuit for 50 billion won in damages. Report to the National Tax Service for tax evasion. All at once. Coordinated and devastating. That's when I realized this was exactly how he used to destroy companies. Multiple fronts, overwhelming force, no escape routes. He'd kept his promise to me he was using the law, not violence, but the old Won-shik's ruthlessness, that hadn't changed. It had just found a new channel. The arrest happened on a Monday morning. I watched the news from my hospital bed, Nari sleeping in the incubator beside me. Yujin was perp-walked from her own office building in handcuffs. Media everywhere. Cameras flashing. Her face was a mask. Not shocked, not scared, just annoyed. Like this was an inconvenience.
That annoyed expression wouldn't last. Because over the next 72 hours, I watched Yujin's entire empire collapse in real time through news coverage. Monday afternoon, tax authority froze all of Easttech's accounts, 8 billion won in seized assets. Tuesday, criminal charges expanded to include corporate espionage. Apparently, she'd stolen trade secrets from Hanguk Ventures when she left. Won-shik had kept evidence for years, waiting. Wednesday, her business partners abandoned her. Investors pulled funding. The company's stock, what little was publicly traded, plummeted 93%. Thursday, international warrants issued, Interpol involvement for money laundering. She couldn't flee even if she made bail. Friday, more charges, more evidence, more walls closing in. It was methodical, systematic, beautiful in a terrible way, like watching a controlled demolition where every explosive had been placed perfectly and someone just had to push the button. Won-shik had pushed the button. "Do you feel guilty?" I asked him Friday night. He'd barely left the hospital except to meet with lawyers and investigators. "No." His answer was immediate. "She tried to burn you alive while you were pregnant. Guilt would require her deserving mercy. She doesn't." "That's not what I asked. I asked if you feel guilty for enjoying this." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Yes, a little. Because part of me is satisfied. The old part, the part I promised you I'd left behind. And it feels good to use those instincts again, even if I'm using them differently." That honesty terrified me, because it meant the monster hadn't died. It had just learned to aim. 6 weeks after the fire, the trial began. Nari was still in the NICU, but stable. The doctors said she could probably go home in another 2 weeks. I testified on day 3, 7 weeks postpartum, still recovering, but I wasn't missing this. The prosecutor asked me to describe the night of April 14th. I was locked in a burning room while 8 months pregnant. Someone disabled the locks, disabled the smoke alarms, and started a fire. They knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't impulsive. This was a calculated murder. Yujin sat at the defendant's table like she was bored, like this was a minor inconvenience. The wicked woman had no remorse, no fear, just cold indifference. Until Won-shik testified. He was devastating on the stand. Calm, precise. He explained their history without emotion, how they'd built Hanguk Ventures using aggressive tactics, how she'd viewed his reformation as weakness, how she'd warned him repeatedly that people don't change. When Miss Choi set fire to my apartment with my pregnant wife inside, Won-shik said, his voice never rising but somehow filling the entire courtroom, it was a test. She wanted to see if I'd revert to old methods, if I'd come after her with violence instead of law. She was also jealous, bitterly jealous of the beautiful life my wife and I were living. That would have proved her right, that I hadn't really changed. The prosecutor asked, "And did you consider doing that?" Won-shik was quiet for 3 seconds. Then, yes, for approximately 5 seconds in that ambulance, I considered every illegal thing I could do to make her pay. Then I looked at my wife and remembered who I was trying to become. So I chose law instead. That's when Yoo-jin broke. She stood up, screaming at Won-shik across the courtroom. "You were supposed to love me. You were supposed to come after me. You were supposed to prove you're still a monster. Instead, you hid behind lawyers and courts like a coward." The judge, "Ms. Choi, sit down." "He's the same person. He just learned to mask it better. This isn't justice. This is revenge dressed up in legal robes." And I understood. She wasn't just trying to kill me. She was trying to kill the idea that people can change. Because if Won-shik could transform, what did that say about her choices, about her decision to stay ruthless? She needed him to be a monster, because that would justify her own monstrosity. The judge found her guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, 12 years. Arson, 5 years concurrent. Bribery, 3 years consecutive. Corporate espionage, 4 years consecutive. Tax evasion, 5 years consecutive. Total, 24 years. Yoo-jin would be 60 when she got out, if she got out. Won-shik held my hand during sentencing. He didn't look triumphant, just relieved, like he'd passed a test he hadn't known he was taking. After sentencing, in the courthouse hallway, Yoo-jin was being led out in handcuffs. She saw us, stopped. "You think you won?" she said to Won-shik. "You're still what you were. You just found a prettier way to destroy people." Won-shik looked at her for a long moment. Maybe, or maybe I learned that destruction and justice aren't the same thing. Then she looked at me. "He'll destroy you too, eventually. It's what he does." I stepped forward, looked her in the eyes. "You tried to burn me alive. You tried to kill my daughter. You did it to prove a point. That makes you a monster, not him, you." "We're the same, him and I." "No," I said quietly. "You're what he left behind, and that must terrify you." Guards led her away. I never saw her again. But I think about her sometimes. I wonder if she understood in the end that she didn't lose to Won-shik. She lost to the version of Won-shik she refused to believe existed. What happened next surprised everyone, including me. Our daughter came home on a Tuesday in June. 7 weeks in NICU, 7 weeks of monitors and tubes, and watching this impossibly tiny human fight for every breath. The doctors said the words we'd been praying for. She's ready. Won-shik carried her car seat like it contained diamonds. I walked beside him, still healing. We'd named her Jinari Zainab, Korean first name, Nigerian middle name, Lily and Beauty, a bridge between our worlds. In the elevator down from NICU, Won-shik said something I'll never forget. "I almost lost you both. But you didn't. If I'd been the man I used to be, if I'd handled Yoo-jin the old way, would you have stayed?" I thought about it, really thought. Honestly,
I don't know. I fell in love with who you were becoming. If you'd gone back, I don't think I could have lived with that man."
Then she was right about one thing. I did change. Because I would have chosen differently before you. Before me, or before you decided to change? Maybe both. That was 14 months ago. A lot has changed since then. Nari is walking now. She is talking. Her first words were "Amma," mom in Korean, and "mama," what she calls me in English. Wonshik cried both times. His company is smaller than it used to be. He sold off the aggressive acquisition divisions. He focuses on ethical investments now. Makes less money, sleeps better. And me? I went back to work part-time with the UN Human Rights, but I also consult with corporations on ethical business practices now, including Wonshik's company. I keep him honest. It's literally in my job description. We moved out of that penthouse. Too many ghosts. Got a smaller place. Still nice because he's a billionaire, but more human. More lived in. He leaves work at 5 p.m. every day now. Hasn't missed a single dinner in 14 months. The nightmares? We both have them. Me reliving the fire. Him reliving the choice he almost made. But we talk about them. We don't hide. People ask me if I'm angry, if I have PTSD, if I'm scared it'll happen again. Yes, to all of it. I'm angry Yujin made that choice. I do have nightmares, and sometimes I'm scared. But I'm also grateful. Because that fire didn't destroy us, it revealed us. Yujin wanted to prove people don't change, that Wonshik was still a monster underneath the Reformation. She failed. Not because Wonshik is perfect. He's not. He still has instincts toward cruelty, still calculates how to destroy people when they threaten him. But now, he chooses not to. Every single day. That's what change looks like. Not the absence of old instincts, the conscious choice to ignore them. Last week, Nari took her first steps. Wonshik was recording on his phone. I was spotting her. She walked 3 steps, fell, got back up, walked 3 more. Wonshik said, "That's my girl. Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. That's who we are now. People who fall and get back up. People who survived fire and chose not to become fire. Eugene is in prison. She'll be there for a long time. And sometimes I wonder if she understands yet that the old Wonshik would have destroyed her quietly, made her disappear. But the new Wonshik, he gave her something the old one never would have. A fair trial, due process, the chance to defend herself. That's not weakness. That's evolution. So if you're watching this and wondering if people can really change, if redemption is real, I'm here to tell you, yes. But it's not easy. It's not comfortable, and it requires choosing every day to be better than you were yesterday. My husband did that. I watched him do it. And our daughter will grow up with a father who understands that true power isn't what you can destroy. It's what you choose to build instead. Before I go, let me ask you something. Did this story change how you think about redemption? About second chances? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell because stories like this, stories about choosing to be better when every instinct screams to be worse, these are the stories that matter. Share this with someone who needs to hear that change is possible, that we're not trapped by who we used to be. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing that people can transform. And thank you for being part of a community that understands the hardest battles aren't fought with fists. They're fought with choices, every single day. I'm Zainab Adeyemi, and this was the night everything burned and what we built from the ashes.
Afro Tales. The weak will become strong one day.